All right, hello. Nick and I are joined by Kristjan again, and we're going to continue the discussion. A number of you have sent in messages asking us to cover certain things, and so we'll go ahead and start off with one of the questions that came in around, Kristjan, how you're managing growth in your operation. How are you adding to the number of acres that you guys are farming? Are you targeting specific landowners and making offers, or are you trying to build relationships and hope that the offers come into you?
Yeah, I mean, so I think we have a corporate goal or a corporate mindset, I would say, or a management mindset that we are going to grow, whether that's by acres or value add through our vineyard or different types of things that we do. So that would be the first thing is growth for us. I wouldn't say is always acres. It's a number of things, but we definitely as an organization love to grow. It's what we find engaging. It's kind of what we say we're addicted to the game, right? Like my addiction is the business of farming. That's what I'm addicted to. I haven't found a farm addiction class to go to yet, but that's my problem. And I would say when it comes to the acre side of it, we probably spend more time just focusing on ourselves than on the landlords and making sure we're doing what we do right, of which then tends to lead to your current landlord spreading the word for you, or someone stopping in for coffee, or making sure you're approachable. So we spend a lot of time with the team around getting a grain bag cleaned up on time, or ensuring that our rented land, the approaches are mowed and the yards are clean, and the semis slow down to 60 kilometers an hour on the road whenever they're meeting anybody. And because it is those little things actually that locally especially tend to create the judgment on you. And obviously we really focus on growing good crops and sustainable crops and want that to be the message out there. But do we headhunt landlords? No, I would say the majority of our growth has been from them approaching us. First from the team and the farm doing a good job of what they do. But, the second thing is we focus a fair bit on what you'd call future planning for ourselves and for landlords. And if there's one thing that I would say all farmers have in common, even though they sometimes might be competing, is they really don't like to send any more tax to the government than they have to. And so I think there's unique ways to set up, leases into the future, whether it's through joint ventures or partial retirements or, sales over time, that can allow those farmers to slow down, whether it's to rent or sell their dirt, and really maintain a whole bunch of money that was going to end up being spent on taxes just by setting up the proper arrangement and being able to do that. So, having myself and another accountant on staff helps with that. But in order to do that, you have to have trust of the landlord. So it all still kind of comes down to that basis of do a good job, and people will eventually notice, and then word of mouth spreads. I would say the other trend, and I can't speak so much for the US, but it's probably absolutely no different than here, is that when packages come available now, it's not just 40 acres or 150 acres. It's, where we are, it's 2,000, 3,000, 6,000 acre farms that are hitting retirement. And whether an investor's bought it or that farmer's ready to rent it out or he's ready to sell it, it takes a different farm to take on that many acres. And it does seem like the mindset is that they don't want to split that up, right? The person that's going to rent that dirt or sell that dirt doesn't seem to want to rent it to 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 people. And so it does really take a different plan to take on a significant number of acres. I always kind of joke that under 10% growth is pretty easy. It's just, it's another couple hours in the field, and 10 to 25%, you better have a plan, and 25 plus can actually get painful if you don't know what you're doing and you haven't been there before. So that, I think, is really starting to change some of the conversations around expansion, is the size of expansions that are required now.
That makes a ton of sense. Can you touch base on if you look at your acres on a line chart since you joined the farm? Obviously, it's been moving up and to the right. Can you pinpoint a couple of those bigger acreage additions that have come onto the farm and just kind of share the backstory? I know you told the story about your dad was picking up grain bags recently, and that might be leading to a land opportunity. Could you share the specifics of a couple of the bigger land additions to your farm that has happened over the last 10, 15 years?
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, if I go kind of back to when I left the accounting firm to come, that was a neighbor. He's I've been renting for him for a lot of years now. So he's 89 years old now. We've been renting 1,500 acres from him for quite some time, and he was just ready to be done. And we actually weren't his first choice. We were renting a little bit of it. There was 3 of us, and just the way it worked out, one of the other farmers kind of dropped his portion, and we picked it up based on, we kind of liked what we were doing. And so there's 2 of us that rent the farm half and half, and both of us really happy, and so is he. And we have a couple other smaller chunks that we've rented for 20 plus years, right? And then from then on, we've bought out a 26 quarter farm, and it was just, father son ready to be done. The risk and the stress of farming was not something that they wanted to maintain for the next generation. So it was one of those kind of a 3 to 5 year, I call it more of a merger and acquisition strategy, right? They actually kept their equipment and seeded and combined for us for 3 years, and we bought the land out over 5 years. So it was a planning strategy on future income taxes, as well as, semi-retirement, versus for them to go from farming full time to just completely being done. So that one would have been 3,600 acres. About 3 or 4 years ago, we picked up 7,000 acres from an investor, an individual investor. He's been buying land since he was, 20 years old. He's brought up a lot of acres, and just kind of phoned me out of the blue. Wondered if we were looking for more dirt. We do go back a long ways. We did some work when I was at MNP, and he's actually run a combine for me for couple of years, even before I rented any land for him. He just really loves farming and is able to take some time off. So he still to this day comes and runs a combine for 350 hours every year, and super neat individual. And then this last one, same thing, kind of got a phone call from an investor wondering if we were interested in making a deal, and so it took us quite a bit of time to get a deal put together. And I can basically tell you, I never pay the highest rent in the area. It's not what we want to be known for, nor do I think it's economically feasible. So that's not really our strategy. So we really try and come up with long-term deals that are fair for both sides, whether that's a straight cash rent or a variable rent based on margin, or a pure joint venture. Lots of different ways. So it's kind of comes in chunks, right? We've done everything from a quarter to 7,000 or 8,000 acres at a time.
Does that 7,000 or 8,000 acre fall into the painful category? Is that fair?
Well, so the first time it did, that was a couple of years ago. This time, so that I just picked up 7,000 here for next spring. We actually dropped 1,500 acres after we picked the 7 up. There we had 1,500 that a portion of it was some of the worst dirt on our farm, and another portion was just out of the way. It just efficiently didn't work. So we're going to have a net expansion of 5,500 to 6,000 on our base, which is it's going to be 30-ish%. But we were kind of planning for it, that we maybe didn't think this much was coming, but we knew something was coming. So we had geared up. We had added another team member, and that person was around for a whole year, and now we kind of have the money side and the equipment side down to just math. Here's what my operating line needs to be per acre. Here's what my combines are per acre, and so we just really try to make sure we have a +1 or +1.5 on the team members, full-time team members at any time, which is taking the pain out of the north of 25% growth. Because that's really the part that is the most painful. Like, obviously, once you've done it once or twice, you can get used to it, the bank and the machinery dealers and the input suppliers. But if you don't have enough people to do the work, and you still want to do everything perfect on the 25,000th acre as you do on the first, then you just work more. So you really got to get your head around, I can't work more. I need to have great people to do everything as good as me, or probably even better, and over prepare on that side, and be okay with, with labor expense being $4, $5, $6 an acre higher than it should be, just because you're always going to carry an extra person around.
Yeah. In the U.S., one of the more effective strategies that I've seen, or from farmers that I have worked with personally, is doing custom farming. Custom farming for guys, you establish a business relationship, they get to see how you work, and then, typically or oftentimes that can lead to when the farmer decides to fully step back, the younger farmer, whoever's doing the custom work, can get the first crack at picking up the farm. Do you guys do any custom work for neighboring farms?
So we used to do a lot when we were smaller. Now we don't do as much. I still do all of my brother's. He's got a cattle farm. I do all of the land work there. But I do think it's a great strategy for younger farmers for 2 reasons. One, you build the relationship up with the older farmer and they see what your work ethic is and what your growing abilities are. But two, it allows you to stretch that capital asset cost over the proper amount of acres, right? So I kind of joke that, in Canada, an 80-foot air seeder is 8,000 acres. One big sprayer should be doing closer to 12,000. Well, if you're an 8,000 acre farm, then it's perfect if you can go do custom spraying on 4,000 acres. You can own the perfect sprayer that you want, but you stretch the capital cost out across everything. Oh, by the way, you get to build a great relationship with a neighbor that hopefully one day works out good for you.
Yeah, that's awesome.
What about the times where, if you had a time where you've taken on more and then later regretted it?
No, not really. Yeah, so far we haven't. We've been, but like I said, I think that's partly by strategy. I mean, we don't go chasing land to overpay for it. We kind of specifically know the dirt that we want to take on and the range that we're willing to pay, and we're really upfront with that. And I kind of use for hockey fans, Detroit Red Wings used to have an old thing called the Lidstrom rule. So Lidstrom, best defenseman in the NHL at the time, I think he was making $8 million. And so when the young guy would walk in the room and say, "Hey, I deserve 9," the general manager would say, "Well, Lidstrom's only making 8, so you really need to explain to me why." And that's almost a bit of the frame we use with the landlords. Like, okay, I'm sorry, and a neighbor did offer you, $5 or $10 an acre more than us, but here's what I'm paying kind of everybody, plus or minus a couple dollars. Here's why. This one has storage. This one's 1,000-acre field. So let's just remember some of the good things we bring. Whether it's a joint venture or a lot of our rent we pay monthly, and a lot of farms won't do that, and the landlord enjoys it, especially the spouse, right? It turns into a retirement. So we do monthly rent. We have a landlord guarantee where we'll soil test everything in year 1, and on year 4, if the soil sustainability indexes went backwards, I'll back pay them $5 an acre. We've never had it go backwards.
Wow.
But little things like that to just say, we're being really transparent with our data and what we're doing to your land, and we're going to treat it like it's our own. And so I don't really want to get into little snowball fights over $5 an acre. Let's just make sure that we're all on the same page. Everybody's getting treated fair, right? And so we haven't turned into that, Ritchie Brother auction, be the highest bidder to pick up land just to say you have acres. It's, would I overspend if it touches something I farm? Probably. But would I overspend just for a section that came for sale, 10 miles away? No, I wouldn't. It needs to fit our plan. And now, I'm honestly at the point now when I get a phone call for expansion, just like this last one. I mean, I called it, we had a team lunch, and I said, here's the deal. We can take on 7,000 acres for next year. You guys want it or not? Because I don't need it. I'm addicted to it, and I'll do it. I enjoy getting ready for it, and it's fun. But if the team would have outvoted me, 10-1, we wouldn't have done it. But usually now the team's voting me the other way. Like let's all do it, right? Okay, let's get at her.
Yeah,
that's interesting. And it has to create some amount of buy-in. In other words, they're all in. Then I mean, they feel like they've had some amount of ability to weigh in, and so I have to imagine that's motivation on their end.
Well, I think it allows. So I mean, everyone wants growth in their career, right? And so at certain organizations, growth is moving up through the corporate ladder, or whatever everyone calls it, right? Where on a farm that's a little tougher. Like there's 2 or 3 different levels of positions to grow through. But what about if when you started working for the farm it was 5,000 acres, and when you retire it's 50 or it's 25 or even if it's 10, the growth actually came in being part of the group that actually grew it. Like you had growth in your career because the company you were with had a growth mentality, and you got to feel the pain and enjoy the wins and and stuff like that. And I think that's an important part of our culture. Like I can honestly tell you, I think if I said tomorrow, guys, I'm 38, we're done growing, we're never going to expand again, within 24 months I'd lose over half my crew. Wow. I just think if they knew their position is exactly what it is for the rest of their life, I'd lose them, right? The reason they're here is because they like the excitement and the challenge and to the growth mindset, and that can't's not an option. We'll just find a way to do it. And growing is important. And when the neighbor stops you because we're out floating fertilizer and they think it's interesting and they want to talk, you take the 10 minutes to talk, right? That's part of the reason they're here is they are part of it. We can't do it without them, and they help immensely with it all. So I think that mindset's pretty important to us. If you don't ever want change or growth, you're probably not going to fit in very well here.
Yeah. On the specific addition in land for next year, can you talk a little bit about equipment? Are you having to pick up more equipment, or were you, maybe over equipped, or, and then, in addition to that, do you fill in anything with leases or rental? I'd just be curious on how that's about a 25-30% increase in land in 1 year.
Yeah.
So just curious to hear some specifics on, how the framework, what you need to lay in place to make that happen next year.
Well, we could probably do a whole talk on equipment one day, but to break it into the big points, I mean, step number one is to make sure you got a great relationship with your lender for operating capital, because equipment actually doesn't matter if you don't have operating capital. So that one we've got tied in with our lender's great with us, and it's kind of a per acre lending agreement. As long as I maintain the three kind of key ratios, it just grows with me. So that fixes that. And honestly, now, Nick, equipment for me, it's just math, right? And I always kind of use those 8,000 acre blocks or multiples of 4, because our combines are about 4,000 acres, our drills are about 8, and our sprayers are about 12. And so we just use that. That just does the math on how we're going to calculate equipment. Same thing, semis and Super B trailers, I want one less than I have combines. So it's just math. Probably the part, I wouldn't say it caught me off guard, but surprising this time was kind of your peripheral equipment from 8,000-9,000 all the way up to 21,000-22,000. It actually stays pretty steady, one big Horob bar and one 16-inch auger and maybe a couple rock pickers and maybe only a couple little 150 horsepower tractors. And that's the part that maybe surprised me a bit this time. Now, we got two pretty big blocks of land in different areas. They're, 35, 40 miles apart. So this expansion, we had to add an extra couple little tractors and, add that second 16-inch auger and some of that, what I call peripheral equipment, fuel trailer, stuff like that in the past, it hasn't come in. We've just been able to spread it. But when it comes to four-wheel drives and seeders and sprayers, combines, semis, grain carts, it's just absolute math, right? We run 3 combines per grain cart and one combine per 4,000 acres, one drill per 8, and sprayers are 12. And so we try to match that up as close as we can. And so obviously this expansion, we're stretching the sprayers a bit. We'll be about 13,000 acres of sprayer. Combines, we're kind of right in the middle. Probably run 7 machines unless I get this new 2,000. Then we'll run 8. And we did put in a couple thousand acres of fall rye last fall because I had a sneaking suspicion this was going to come. So, the 26,000 put in 2,000-ish of fall rye puts us almost right on the sweet spot for drills at 8,000 a drill.
That's great.
What's that relationship with your lender like? Does he or she share your philosophy around the math that you just shared? Are they bought in on that strategy too?
Yeah, so I think they're bought in, but it's probably because I preach to them about it so often, right? Like it's one of them ones, Kristjan, make sure you don't screw up because you're kind of leading the charge on how lending works in some areas of agriculture. As long as I don't screw up, we'll be doing good. But no, they're really passionate about agriculture, the opportunities in agriculture, and the ability to work together. So I can say when we go through our annual review, obviously it's pretty big numbers, but it feels a lot more like my VP of finance working on stuff for me. And when they come to me, it's more questions for the CEO, i.e. my job. I don't feel that it's a, hey, you have to do everything for us relationship. It's very much we're partners in this together. And here's where we can give a little bit. And here's where we need you to give a little bit. And it works really well. We actually use one of the local credit unions, Connexus Credit Union in Saskatchewan. And I got to give credit right from their leadership team down to our local representatives. They're all very much on board with our operation. And it's pretty normal that I'll get a call or a coffee in with the CEO while we're going through annual review just to say, hey, this part looked good. Why are you doing this? Why don't you like this? Here's a part we think you need to watch for. And so it's a great relationship.
That's awesome. Lender relations are super important. I think we could probably break that out into another call as well. When it comes to relations and managing and growing relationships, can you talk some specifics on what you do with landlords? A farm newsletter? Do you have barbecues? Just what kind of communications do you have in place for keeping landlords in tune on what you guys got going on the farm?
Yeah, so part right now is, like I said, we only have 4 or 5 landlords. So a lot of them will come ride in the machinery with us, especially the 89-year-old I was talking about. He comes for rides 4 or 5 times a year, stops in for coffee at least once a month. But that is one reason we're fairly active on our social media, is the landlords all really enjoy watching that part. And I think the social media and the website story can be a live newsletter versus just writing a newsletter. That's more the way we've attacked it. And then obviously I get the odd YouTube mention, etc. That's a lot more of a live feed than just a newsletter for us. So that's the way we went about it. We do normally non-COVID, we do a once a year Christmas party where everyone we do business with and all our landlords get invited. So we find it's pretty sweet locally. Like, all the landlords can talk to our suppliers and, meet the CEO of the local John Deere and stuff like that. And it's really good. And yeah, honestly, like, even just remembering that they're important and to send them Christmas cards. I mean, we get a lot of comments back because some of them have moved away and they just can't believe how big my kids are at 8 and 6 because they remember them getting born, right? Like that. I tell my wife all the time, like, that it's amazing what a Christmas card does to a landlord, right? Because they're part of it and they don't always get to be around us. So just little stuff like that. And our office crew is fantastic. I mean, I think this year they did hoodies and toques, and 2 years ago they did cutting boards and a bottle of wine, and they'll send that out to landlords once a year, and it'll have our logo and stuff on it. But just to remember that, we do really appreciate what they do for us and how it solidifies our land base.
That's awesome. Do you have any, I'm not as familiar with your very specific local area, but are you doing drain tile or any really hefty land improvements that you need to, really, get on the same page with the landlord? I think that's a way that I literally, just before I got on the call, a younger farmer reached out to me and asked me what what I've seen in the past on tiling rented land. So whether it's sharing costs, doing long-term leases, just curious on if you guys have any of those big hefty land improvements that go on right in your backyard.
Yeah, so we haven't done a lot of tiling yet. We have some land tile that's more surface. I don't like the word drainage, so I call it surface landscaping. And we have a lot of bush around here, so some quarters need some, cat work and then to clean it up. And we're working on the same thing as the young farmer, right? It's more, we're kind of going down the path of writing the rent contract. Here's what it costs per acre in order to clean those acres up and make them productive. And so let's do a long-term. I'm big on long-term leases. I don't like 1s and 3s. I like 5s, 10s, and 15s because it fits better with our equipment and our debt and our lending strategy. So, if it's a 10-year lease and we clean up, 100 acres in the first 2 years, here's how many years we get it for rent free, and then it rolls in to pay the rent, but the rent free portion is what covers us doing the work, right? And so that's the part. We don't want them to be out of cash to have to clean it up unless they want to, right? If they want to pay for that all, then they can start collecting rent a lot earlier. But a lot of times we're willing to do it to pick up the acres and the efficiencies, and we just kind of hope or attempt to get some rent free time back on those acres in the interim until it's fair for the both of us. And we've done lots of custom work for landlords with tracos and heavy discs and stuff like that, where we just pick a rate and we show them the hourly rate, and it comes off the rent check at the end of the year too. It's not, you have to pay us by the hour each month. We'll just figure it out once a year. So we've done quite a bit of stuff like that.
How about your rent contracts? Do you have any flex leases that flex with yields and or prices, or is it all flat cash rent, fixed rate? Just be curious on how you guys do that.
No, I prefer gross margin rent over yield or price. So yield times price minus seed, fertilizer, and chemical. So we use farm averages, but then it's applied to those acres. So it's the average canola price across my whole farm times the yield that location came up with minus seed, fert, and chem leaves us with gross margin. So we do a percentage of gross margin with caps and collars with a couple that want to share in the risk, and it's active income for them, right? And then we also do quite a few that are just straight cash leases.
So when you say a collar, that would be a base rent in there, right? A base rent and then a cap?
Exactly. So there's a base and a maximum based on it can vary based on gross margin, but there's a minimum rent and a maximum rent. The minimum rent I calculate based on what I can actually kind of insure that land to, so that I don't lose money. And that's how we calculate the minimum. And then the variation obviously is based on how good that I do. But then, if they want to have a minimum rent, I'm going to put in a maximum rent. Right. So so the home runs, we really participate together. The grand slams, they get the first 4 or 5 bags, and after that, I'm going to take it myself.
Yeah. Would you do that for the specific crops that are planted on that landlord's farm, or is it, some sort of an average crop rotation across their acres?
Yeah, so on exactly, because we use obviously my John Deere and can track exactly what we're doing on the land. We just use the exact crops that are on their land. The only thing we average is the prices. I want when I contract grain, I don't care if it's on a variable rent piece of land or mine or somebody else's. It's just so many bushels I'm contracting. So it's the average contracted price and then their exact yield, seed, fertilizer, and chem on their acres.
Yeah. In your part of the world, when do you write the rent checks? Spring rent? Are they all fall rent?
Well, actually, to most of mine, I'm converting to monthly with then a top up at the end of the year on the variable ones, right? The whole world runs on monthly. So my equipment payments are monthly, my rent payments are monthly. I'm trying to get my fuel monthly, so that the only thing that isn't is seed, fert, and chem. So that way I have less cash flow things to determine that I need to plan sales for, right? I know my burn rate is, X dollars per month for all of my costs other than seed, fert, chem. So I'm going to make a big purchase there, then I need to have grain sales time for that. Otherwise, here's what my grain sales need to be monthly. So we're really trying to get our business to monthly, so it's way more budgetable on a month-to-month basis. We do have the odd guy that will pay all spring rent, and we have a couple that we pay spring and fall half and half. But the majority we're getting switched over to a monthly setup, and they just pick the date. You want to be the 1st or the 15th or the 30th? I don't care. And then if they're on a variable, then the calculation will get done at the end of the year for the top up.
That's great. Appreciate the insight. Yeah, it's awesome. I know this is probably, I think everything we've talked about is a pretty hot topic in ag, but growth is just kind of this mystery. And, how do you be proactive without maybe being overly proactive? And, I think the way you're doing it sounds really respectful of everybody in your area. And so I applaud you for that. And, appreciate the insight.
Yeah, likewise. I think my big takeaways are your focus on the culture internally around growth, the external relationships, and really optimizing those for the long run, and just a continual, steady year-over-year growth, and that's what you're aiming for.
Well, I think the one thing too probably is if you have a mindset for growth, then you'll make the decision, right? I think a lot of growth gets stagnated by decision fatigue or deal fatigue. It just takes so long to make the deal, whether it's pending financing or do I want it all or do I want this, or we got a pretty good idea. If it's this many acres and it fits in one of these blocks, the answer is yes, and I'll write you a check in 2 days, right? Or I'll probably pay for half of it now and I need 48 hours for the rest, right? And so I think that part, just being ready for it and having a plan ahead of time, can really get rid of that deal fatigue. And yeah, we try to be as respectful and encouraging of all our neighbors and locals as possible. I'm sure if you did an anonymous survey, not everybody agrees with me because some people don't like the farm that's growing. But, as an overall, I would say that our communities, we try as hard as we can to ensure that communities are successful too, and the industry is successful. And hopefully that everyone working together, it helps everybody.
That's awesome. Well, thank you, Kristjan, for taking the time again. We are very appreciative. Super helpful. Please, if anyone else has other conversation ideas, please send them our way. Send them to one of us, and we would love to keep the conversation going on topics that you're interested in. So with that, thank you all and take care. Have a great day.